boring. Now, I'll be starting with another tip of this week. This time, it's about life insurance. Yes, life insurance. Now, you may not like to think so, but some people do need insurance to leave something behind for their loved ones. How do you do that? Some ways it's linked with life insurance. So, the tip is how to prepare for it. So, there are 6 top tips to save you money and improve your cover. So, first is consider joint policy. The cost of 2 single life policies does not cost much more than a joint policy. So, let's say a male and a female aged 35 who are both non-smokers require 250,000 if one of them dies during the next 20 years, whilst their young family are financially dependent on them both. A joint policy that pays out 250,000 if one of them dies costs about 25 to 50 per month. What if they were involved in a fatal road traffic accident together? That would be 250,000 still be would that be well actually would 250,000 still be enough for the children's guardians to bring them up without financially struggling? 2 single life policies for 250,000 cover each is £3 per month for this extra couple. So in other words, you get 250,000 per times 2, but for £3 per month instead of £25.50, and you get better worth. So that's why having a joint policy, it may be worthwhile considering instead of just 2 single policies, because the policy provider is getting 2 people knowing that you're together, and therefore you get a different deal. But of course, it depends upon what's out there. First is think about joint policy instead of 2 single policies, because 2 single policies, the policy do end up being expensive. Second, decrease or level insurance. What does that mean? If your life insurance is to protect your mortgage, then you should consider what type of mortgage you have. Is it a capital repayment mortgage or interest only? But of course, the difference is capital repayment means you're actually reducing the mortgage repayment as time goes on. If it's interest only, then of course you're in a problem, because you then have to pay the full amount once the term of the mortgage comes to an end. Or you might have to think about remortgaging or other options. Then you might need a financial advisor for this, and you will find that you've got a bad deal. Third, review your existing cover. So, do you still climb the mountains? Do you trek, or do you take risks? Obviously, if you're taking those risks, you need more. You need to pay more towards the insurance because you're more risky. For example, let's say if you're climbing mountains, the insurance life policy giver will charge you more because you're taking risks. But if you're not taking risks, the amount you contribute should be lower. So find out what it is. So look into your existing cover if you've got one. Fourth is sometimes if you're actually a director of a company, it's included as part of insurance. So it's now possible, I suppose, for a limited company to take out a policy on its employees for the benefit to be placed on trust for a nominated beneficiary other than the company. So in other words, let's say if you're a company director, the company itself has to take an insurance under your name, but the people who will benefit, not necessarily the company, but the children of the person who died. So that's why it's worth checking. If you are a company director, for example, it may give you benefits without you knowing it. Because obviously, the moment if you're a company director, you need to be insured, and your insurance might cover life insurance. So find out. The other thing is when it comes to terminal illness or critical illness. So terminal illness cover is normally included free of charge with a typical life insurance policy. But this provides a benefit to be paid out if you're diagnosed with terminal illness and have a life expectancy of less than 12 months. Now, critical illness pays out the benefit upon the diagnosis of a critical illness such as heart attack or cancer. But do not confuse these two. You may think that they have critical illness cover when you don't. So in other words, you are going to have to read these small prints. There is no escaping. Critical illness can be added to a life policy and need not be for the same sum assured. At least you could have some cover if your budget is tight. So it's looking at your means and looking at the types of cover you have. And finally, of course, if you're not quite sure, best thing to do is see a specialist, especially a financial advisor who's very good at life insurance, to see if it covers your ideal need. So that's my life insurance as tips of this week. Now, after we were talking about council tax. Yeah, council tax. Now, I've covered this subject many times on Your Money Matters. It is an important one, and I as time goes by, I've noticed that people's liability to pay is becoming onerous. In other words, you must pay, because local authorities throughout the country are charging individuals who used to be exempt from it, or you didn't have to pay anything, but now I'm afraid you have to pay because of cuts. But since you do have to pay, the question still boils down to basics. What is council tax? How do you pay council tax? Who pays council tax? Discounts that may be available, exemptions even. And what happens when there are empty properties? Changes in circumstance. If you need to appeal, how you appeal. And of course, recovery and enforcement. So those are some of many things I would like to cover for your benefit. So, so the question really is, who pays council tax? Usually, one person, called the person who's liable to pay council tax. Nobody under the age of 18 can be a liable person. Couples living together will be held to be jointly liable. Oh, there's another term for it actually. Jointly and severally liable, even if there is only one name on the bill. So in other words, if the name is under Mr. Mia or Mr. Jason, his wife is also liable because it's linked with the property that you're living in rather than simply person. So that's why you both are liable rather than just simply one person. This applies, or as I said before, if you're married, cohabiting, or a civil partner. If only one person lives in a property, they will be the liable person. If more than one person lives there, a system called hierarchy of liability is used to work out who is a liable person. Let me repeat, it's the hierarchy of liability. So the person at the top or nearest to the top of the hierarchy is the person liable. Two people at the same point of hierarchy will be held to be jointly and severally liable. So, in other words, if husband and wife living together, both will be jointly severally liable. Otherwise, there is hierarchy of liability. Now, let's talk about what is hierarchy of liability. For example, a resident owner-occupier who owns either the leasehold or freehold of all or part of the property, a resident tenant, a resident who lives in the property and who is a licensee. This means they're not a tenant but have permission to stay there. Any resident living in the property, for example, a squatter, owner of the property where no one is resident. Usually, the hierarchy will decide liability if the following circumstances the owner will be the liable party. So this is where basically that we talked about hierarchical liability where individuals are liable, where you are occupying, regardless whether you're licensee or not, but you're living there. Now, when you don't have what I've mentioned earlier, but is where circumstances are different, then the property, let's say for example, if the property is in multiple occupation or it has been let to more than one household, then I suppose then it puts a burden on the owner. The owner is liable. The people who live in the property are all under the age of 18, then the owner is liable. The property is accommodation for asylum seekers, the owner is liable. The people who are staying in the property are there temporarily and have their main home somewhere else. The property is a care home. So those mean that the owner is liable. Otherwise, of course, hierarchy of liability means tenants are liable or licenses are liable. Those who know who are living there already. If you don't believe that you are the person who should be billed for council tax, write to the council and say why. Okay, so do that. Now, in terms of that's liability, or clearly in a sense of who should be paying. Now let's move on to discounts. Yep, discounts. Not everyone has to pay the full council tax. There are several types of discounts available. For example, 100, but of course you need to check individual councils to find out what discounts are there, because since the budget is tight for every council, each council has its own policy. So you need to find out who is giving full discount and who isn't. So let's say, for example, 25% for a property that is undergoing major structural repairs and alterations, and as a result is unoccupied because it is both unfurnished and uninhabitable. Here, you can get discount. You can get 50% discount for tied properties and mobile homes. You can get 25% discount where there is only one adult resident in a property. You can get 10% discount where the property is furnished and classed as a second home. But of course, look into that. Different councils have different policies. I'm looking at Brentwood. You probably won't know where Brentwood is, but yeah. So look at Tower Hamlets, look at Otherwood, and some councils give no discounts when it comes to you having a second home. But of course, there are standard ones. Single person discount. Again, if you're a single person living in the property, you get 25% off. Some authorities may give second homes, which I mentioned. Now, some authorities even give you discount if you're disabled. So you need to find out if you fall under those categories. Now, there's a difference between discounts and exemptions. Exemptions, basically, where, let's say, for example, well, actually, they're not that different. But you need to find, exemptions might be something like if you're a student. If you're a student, then obviously you're exempt from paying. Or you might be, the same might apply. I suppose if your property is occupied by students, again, your property might be exempt. Or if your property is occupied by a charity and owned by a charity, that might be exempt. Or empty due to person being in prison. Again, because you're not living in the property and you're in prison, then you might be exempt from it. So the conditions can be long. But really, there is no borough the same. So you need to speak to your own borough. Now, by the way, speaking of local borough in Tower Hamlets, they're currently having a consultation on council tax reduction scheme. So find out what you think about it in the sense of the change of policy that they are intending on introducing in April, and you might want to think about taking part and see anything to do with discounts and exemptions and other things could be of interest to you, and fill in that consultation survey. But of course, there are other ones in relation to council tax, and that is empty properties. Again, under section 12(2) of the Local Government and Government Finance Act 2012 allows local authorities to set a council tax rate for long-term empty properties. And so yeah, so find out what your borough is doing. If you've got empty properties, they might give you full benefit, they might not. It depends upon individual council policy. But on occasions, you may realize that you may be entitled to support. You might be entitled to a full support or some. But other times, your circumstances do change. So when your circumstances change, what needs to happen then? Yeah, so then I'm afraid you cannot ignore your situation. A change of address and or a change in your circumstance can affect the amount of council tax you pay or your entitlement to council tax support. So it is important that you tell the council about any change in your circumstances that affect your council tax liability. If you've already told the staff who are working in other departments, still that's another department. You still have to tell the benefits team, the council tax team, the recovery team. Otherwise, you might find that they will chase you for overpayment. For example, giving examples where you might be affected by annual liable. If you move address, definitely tell them. If you believe that you're entitled to a discount or exemption, you tell them. If you believe that you're no longer entitled to a discount, if the valuation office amends the band of your property, again, council needs to know. If your property changes from empty to occupied, they need to know. So in order to notify them, different councils have different ways of knowing. You might have to drop in and leaving a note, or you can email them. That's a good way these days, is simply because the moment you email them, you've got a record that you've sent them. And you could say, here is evidence that I have sent a proof of communication to the council about my change of circumstance. Therefore, you ought to have known instead of you causing trouble for me. So, yeah, so of course, and some councils, in fact, if you don't notify them sooner than later, you might find that they'll penalise you for it. So to avoid any kind of penalty, you should really respond ASAP rather than wait till later. Now, naturally, there will be problems. There will be problems in the sense of you dispute or you think what the council has said or is doing is wrong and it's not correct, especially when it comes to council tax. So then the question is, what do you do? Then obviously this is when you have to use your right of appeal. So now, if you appeal, you must still continue to pay until the appeal is decided. If your appeal succeeds, they will refund you if you have been overpaid. Now, of course, you can appeal for a number of reasons. First, you may want to do is challenge based on your band. Now, for example, in England, valuation bands are based on property values set by governments on 1st of April 1991. So really, we're looking at the value of the properties set in that year, not what a property is worth in the market. So let's say, for example, if you bought your property today, it's not the cost of property in the market that you bought today that matters. It's actually the cost set by the government on the 1st of April 1991. And please don't ask me why. It's got a tough one. But anyway, so that's where it is. But in Wales, things are quite different. In Wales, it's set in April 2003. But yeah, of course, you must pay unless it's so difficult. And you can ask the evaluation office agency to check if the evaluation is correct, and make a formal challenge to the evaluation office agency to see if what the council is suggesting you should pay is correct based on the size of the property. So it's all about whether the property is on a good size, or it's they made a mistake. It shouldn't be in one band rather than another band. So watch out. But of course, don't forget, even if you do think about appealing against the council because you think the ban is right and it goes to valuation office agency, it doesn't mean it may go in your favor. It could find that the property's banding is incorrect and it should be in a lower band. That's great, fine. You will therefore be liable to pay less council tax. Obviously, that's great. It could be that your band is correct and therefore it should remain in the same band. There we go, that's great too. Well, maybe not, depends how you look at it. It could even be that the property banding is incorrect and it should be in a higher band. So that's why before you think about appealing, it's important that you do actually look around you, find out what your neighbor is paying in terms of your neighbor's property size, and talk to a lot of people before deciding to go for the full process in appeal. And by the way, it's free. You don't have to pay anything. So yeah, so when it comes to appeal to the valuation office agency, the whole thing is free and there is no cost to you at all. Okay, but what happens if you don't pay council tax? I know we've talked about all the bans, we've talked about discount, exemption, we talked about appeal, but how about recovery process? And don't forget, my business as a debt advisor, I primarily give advice on recovery because I have to deal with the problems that I'm facing. And that is, people are unable to afford to pay, especially when we are talking about lots of money is involved or lack of it. So in this case, let's be honest about it. We know that money problems causes tension at work, tension at home, arguments between husband and wife and children. We know that. Let's be frank about it. We may not want to talk about it, but money problems causes so much tension. If you don't talk about money, you may find that the tension is getting worse. So best thing I would say you do when there is a problem with money is talk about it rather than hide about it. You're working hard. Money is scarce. If you're not managing properly, in a sense, let's say, talking to each other about it and making sure you're saving for rainy days, it gets even more difficult. So yes, of course, talk to your loved ones, talk to your children, talk to your wife and husband. But of course, there are times you will be finding difficulties when it comes to money. So, and the council will approach you for money. So then what can you do? This is when council will follow a process. Council, when it writes to you, it will remind you first. It will say, you haven't paid. And now, normally they send you a reminder notice. This is basically telling you if you don't pay your bill on time, they will send you a council-like reminder notice, including notice of the amount you need to pay to bring your installment up to date. So basically, bring your account up to date. As long as you bring your account up to date within 7 days of the date of the notice and pay future installments on or before the due date, no further action will be taken against you. But of course, it doesn't work out like that as you think it should. Then they have to think about sending you other notices, which then goes to final notice. If all the installments have become overdue, or if payment is brought up to date after we have sent or they have sent you a second and final reminder notice, they will issue you with a final notice. And the notice will advise you that you lost your right to pay your year's charge by installment and full payment is now due. So they will expect the full amount rather than repayment. They will also say, if you want to avoid us to take further action, you must pay the balance for the whole year within 7 days. If not, they will summon you to court. So then we are talking about, what do you think? Court summons. Yes, court summons, absolutely. So, and if you do not pay the full tax balance within 7 days of receiving one of the notices. They could prepare you, issue you with court summons for non-payment of council tax, which will no doubt incur further cost because anything that goes to court will involve court cost. So yeah, although the council may say you don't have to attend the court, but I would say it's advisable that you do. And you can talk to the court officials, you can talk to the judges and explain your situation. Oh, and also if you have a defense, explain your defense. It's more likely you'll get a better deal if you're in court than not. Otherwise, the council will just get a liability order without you being there and without you even negotiating what it is that the council said. And so yeah, it will be done in a blindfolded way. And you can even discuss a repayment arrangement during the court hearing if you really want to. So I mean, yeah. So bear that in mind. And of course, if they do get a liability order against you, that's it. In the sense of court has declared that you owe the money. Then it all boils down to enforcement. Really, there are deduction from your earnings if you're working, or from benefits if you're on benefit. Maximum you can say to the court, take money from my benefit, and that's about either £5 or £3.70. They can even make you bankrupt if you're not careful. And of course, if you're willfully refusing to pay, they might even committal to prison. But of course, they may even look at charging order if they think it's the reasonable option. No doubt we've all come across bailiffs. So this is kind of pretty it for now. So we've covered a great deal. I hope you enjoyed the show on Your Money Matters, and we'll catch up next